The first of Roosevelt's 4 freedoms is freedom of speech, and in many ways, it is the foundational civil and political right. It's central to all freedoms: expression through the press, assembly, peaceful protest, belief. If you can't say what you believe, you aren't truly free. Today, freedom of speech is under threat around the world. In many countries, you risk imprisonment for simply voicing your opinion, which is a violation of the basic tenet of liberty. Now, freedom of speech is often difficult because at its core, it requires that people who decide to go into public life must tolerate criticism from all quarters. Whether you are a mayor, a police chief, a diplomat, or a national leader, democracy requires you to sign up for public criticism. If you want to have political power and influence and the status and responsibilities of public office, you have to be willing to be criticized, fairly and unfairly, and sometimes you might even be called names. Now, I'm not an elected official. I'm a career diplomat, but I occupy a position of public trust for my country. And that means I will be criticized for what I do or say and for the policies of my government, which I represent. But I defend that criticism, even when it's directed against me, because that is freedom of speech, our utmost sacred right as free people. That is what freedom means. In the United States today, our commitment to freedom of speech is on television screens around the world. As the whole world knows, we have some serious problems that need serious attention. Racist violence and instances of police brutality. The horrific killing of George Floyd has jolted America awake to the need to change our policies, protect our citizens, and address systemic problems of racism. That's where freedom of speech comes in. If we didn't have freedom of speech, we wouldn't continue to improve as individuals and as a nation. We wouldn't be allowed freedom of speech in debates, in the press, in social media, and in peaceful protests in our streets. Today, I am hopeful that out of the terrible tragedy of Mr. Floyd's death, some good may come, precisely because our citizens are exercising their freedom of speech to press for much needed change. Now, please allow me to share a couple reflections on freedom of speech in Zambia. Like the United States and other countries, Zambia is a signatory to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and thus committed to free speech. It is unfortunate in Zambia today that it is frowned upon to say anything critical about senior government leaders or problems in government without risking being censored or even threatened with arrest. Some people say if you criticize the president, you are unpatriotic. One leader in the National Assembly said government and party cadres should break the bones of its critics. That is inflammatory and not a peaceful exercise of freedom of speech. For me, freedom of speech needs to take place in the context of peaceful expression. If party cadres break into a radio station because the host is interviewing an opposition leader, that is a violation of freedom of speech. If media outlets that feature opposition and critical voices are closed, that is not freedom of speech. And when the Public Order Act is unevenly applied, allowing one party an unfair advantage of holding events and rallies, while opposing parties and civil society groups are not granted the same, that is a restriction on freedom of speech. Now, at the same time, these freedoms must be used responsibly. Social media is an important part of our lives today. It can be used in 1,000 different ways, both good and bad. We, of course, should strive to ensure that social media is not used to distribute hate speech or misogynistic speech. But when discussing the regulation of social media, it's important not to outlaw or prohibit fair comment and criticism of public officials. Respectful and peaceful debate and disagreement are essential parts of freedom of speech, our most precious right. I strongly encourage Zambia to protect and promote these freedoms, which are central to your democracy. To my Zambian friends, in government and outside government, I am convinced that your democracy and governance in the country will be strengthened by encouraging these fundamental freedoms. Let's now hear a song about another fundamental liberty, the freedom of belief, the freedom of religion. Here to sing Silence is the Zambian artist Pompey, followed by a short reading from Malota Damaseke.